Can the Rams make a statement and beat the unbeaten Eagles? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. What is up, Ramley, and what is up, Eagles fans? Welcome to a crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Eagles. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. Covering LA sports for over a decade, the Lakers for SI, the Dodgers Nation. Now the Rams for Locked On. As always, I'm joined by the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on Twitter at Travis Rogers. And today we are joined by Mr. Gino Cammillero from Locked On Eagles. And on today's show, we got key matchups, big storylines. Just a reminder that this episode of Locked On Rams and Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for first deposit match up to $100. But let's dive right into this one. You've got the unbeaten Philadelphia Eagles sitting at 4-0, trying to get to 5-0, heading to Los Angeles to take on this 2-2 Rams team, trying to get to over 500. This Rams team has exceeded a lot of expectations. They have an opportunity to make a big statement against Philly. But Gino, how are we feeling about this game heading into this matchup?
This game, man, I'm happy to be talking about this one. I think before the season, we kind of wrote this one off as, the Eagles should walk in there and win this game. But this Eagles team, they've been tested the first 4 weeks. It looks like the Rams are really putting it together with a young squad, and hats off to Sean McVay and everybody in that building. And I know over at our show and a lot of people in Philadelphia, there are some reservations about this game. They're nervous to head over to California, and I think this should be an exciting one come 2:05 or 2:05 Mountain Time, but 4:05 Eastern Time there.
Now, as far as the Rams are concerned, the big storyline in this one is, will Cooper Kupp play? Of course, he's missed the first 4 games. He returned to practice yesterday. All signs look like it most likely is going to happen, but I think that has to be the top question. This one, will Cooper Kupp give it a go this Sunday? What would you say, Travis, though?
Well, I think it kind of goes together with what Gino was saying a minute ago, that what this game felt like when the schedule came out and what it feels like right now are very different, right? Mm-hmm. That when this schedule came out, over the summer, and you're thinking the defending NFC champions are coming in here to take on a team that might not win 3 or 4 games, this felt like they're just going to come in and throttle the Rams. I'm not so sure that's true anymore. And obviously the Eagles will be the favorite. Obviously the Eagles are the team that is 4-0, and the Rams are the team that's 2-2. But the Rams have been competitive in all of these games. The Rams are better than anybody thought, and Matthew Stafford is playing at an incredibly high level. Gino, we were talking a little bit before we started to record here about what happened against Washington last week. And I think that, with the secondary the way that it is, in Philadelphia, the return of Cooper Kupp, the emergence of Puka Nacua, the commitment to the running game really does give the Rams an opportunity. Maybe not, a flat-footed fight, but certainly an opportunity that didn't exist a few months ago.
Oh, I think you're bang on. I think Sean McVay has done an excellent job. And Les Snead taking in the youngest roster, what they bring in, I think it was like 33 guys to their rookie training camp, if I'm not mistaken, which is just an absurd number. And somebody who comes from that scouting background, hats off to them, trying to find more young talent. And look Puka comes out, Tutu comes out. And those are the things that you just have to be cognizant of if you are the Eagles. And I think that is the storyline. It's the pass defense. They've been competitive in every single game that they've been in. 3 of the 4 have been 1-score games, and they've allowed quarterbacks like Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins and Sam Howell to put up some pretty big numbers. And they try to bring in Bradley Roby. They signed him to the practice squad this week. I don't even know if he is going to be active come game day. But the mention of Cooper Kupp, that should send shivers up your spine if you're playing for Philadelphia, because you already had to worry about Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, who I say, if you give Sean McVay space on defense, he is going to take advantage of that space. And one of the things the Eagles like to do for some odd reason is play a lot of off coverage, kind of give you that leeway underneath. And that's a threatening sign if you're going up against a coach in an offense who that's what it's predicated on. It's predicated on my X's and O's are going to beat you even if I don't have the personnel. So hopefully the Eagles can turn it around. The one thing that I do have hope for is that the Eagles can stop the run and they can make Matt Stafford, who with that hip injury, he isn't the most mobile guy as it is. Can they get to him early and often? I've been trying to say that's the game plan every single week. Baker was a little mobile. Kirk was mobile. Sam Howell was mobile. Mac Jones, they got the ball out quick. If they don't have a quick game, can they get to Matt Stafford and really make this thing hectic for that Rams offense early?
Yeah, and that's going to be the number one key. Can the Rams reestablish the run like they did last week? We saw last week in Monday night's loss to the Bengals, only ran the football 10 times. They really picked it up against the Colts. Kyron Williams had his first 100-yard game, had 25 carries, added some TDs. But that Philly defense, they've done a really nice job stopping the run, allowing opponents just 2.9 yards per carry. So if you can try to establish that run, try to keep Stafford vertical, like you mentioned a few seconds ago, you're going to have a good game plan against this Philly secondary. I think that if he has time, he's going to carve. And it's really a battle of contrasting styles, right? I mean, the Eagles have the most rushing attempts in the league, the Rams most passing attempts in the league. You see Matthew Stafford averaging over 300 yards passing. I think this is a matchup where heading into the season, you would say, okay, the Rams are going to be overmatched. It's the big bat Eagles coming to town. Go Birds, fly Eagles, fly versus the Rams. But I think now the Rams sitting at 2-2, trying to get to over 500. I think the big question is, are the Rams for real? We know the Eagles are for real. We know the Eagles are going to be Super Bowl contenders, but the Rams have an opportunity to make a real statement if they can somehow pull off a win. I think if you look at the secondary for the Eagles, you can take advantage of that and get some points in the air. And I think for me, the big one is can you prevent the Eagles from running it down your throat? Can you find a way to get a lead to where the Eagles can't just pound the rock and just take time off the clock and just dominate this? And we know we're going to see some brotherly shove in this one.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, D-Mac. I want to put two of the things that you guys said together, that Matthew Stafford is dinged, right? The hip injury. What does that look like? And Gino, like you mentioned, do the Rams have that quick release offense? Do they have that get the ball out quick thing that Doug and I have looked at this for a long time? This is what Kyle Shanahan does to the Rams over and over and over again, right? The ball snapped, it's out, it's gone. That Aaron Donald never gets a chance really to get involved in anything when they play the 49ers. That's kind of not what the Rams do. I think one of the few criticisms of Matthew Stafford so far this season is that he might hold the ball a little bit too long. That's not going to work against the Eagles. You do not want him holding the ball a long time. The Rams offensive line has had 3 games where it's been pretty good and one where it was an absolute disaster against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football a couple of weeks ago. Which team shows up on Saturday? Is Alaric Jackson back at left tackle? Do they put Nopum back at right guard? Do they leave Kevin Dotson in there? They got some moving parts up front there. I don't think you want any sort of confusion on your offensive line when you're playing the Eagles, because Matthew Stafford is not going to run away from anybody. He does hold the ball for a while, and if the offensive line isn't up for the task, that's a bad combination of events.
I think the one thing that we can both agree on is that if you have an interior rusher who is at the top of his game, that can really change everything that we are saying right now. Because if Jalen Carter, who steps in there for an injured Fletcher Cox, who looks like he is not going to play this weekend, and Jordan Davis step up, can they get to Matt Stafford on the interior? And can Aaron Donald do that for Jalen Hurts? Because you're probably going to be shocked to hear this. Jalen Hurts has been substantially worse outside the pocket than he has been inside the pocket. Inside the pocket, he's a top 3 quarterback according to all statistics, pushing the ball down the field. But when he scrambles, he's like a bottom 5 quarterback right now when it comes to accuracy, when it comes to just hitting his target. Yeah, it is shocking. I see your face, Travis. Yeah. So I would say if whatever team can take away that interior rush the most, the Eagles, they're down their right guard, Cam Jurgens. He had a walking boot after the game last week. Backup right guard Sua Opeta will be in there. So I think the Eagles being injured, the Rams starting to get healthy now, it's just 2 different teams going in 2 different directions. I like what the Rams are building out there. And you guys in that division right now, man, a wild card berth should be on the mind of Rams fans right now. With the way that it's going with Seattle, I think you guys are right there with them. I mean, that division's wide open. And we got to handle our business out here in the East because Dallas is right on our heels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. The teams overachieve, they exceed expectations, and this is a game where I think if you win, you feel great about it. If you lose, you say, okay, you're still in the mix with a brutal schedule and a lot of winnable games in the back, and you can still, like you said, make that playoff push. But for me, I'm terrified of that Eagles run blocking unit up front. They're tops in the league according to PFF. If you can pound the rock with Swift, with Gainwell, with Hurts, like you mentioned, Hurts running wise, he's my fantasy quarterback. I follow him very closely. I'm in like 10 leagues. So Travis hears me talking about my fantasy quarterbacks. It feels like I have every quarterback in the league, but Hurts is in my number one league. And look, I mean, 3.8 yards per carry this season. Last week against Richardson, they allowed him to go for 56 yards, 5.6 yards per carry with a touchdown. So I would not be surprised to see Jalen Hurts get some big gainers. And this is kind of the game where he kind of turns the corner as far as seeing that rushing on the outside that we saw last season. But we got some key matchups in this one that will ultimately decide the game. We haven't talked about big bad Aaron Donald. Haven't talked about Puka Nacua too much yet. But that's coming up next. On Locked On Rams and Locked On Eagles.
All right, before we do that, D-Mac, let's talk about Prize Picks, right? Prize Picks is the most fun that I've had playing daily fantasy sports because you can win up to 25 times your money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, and then you pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. It is really that easy. You can test your skills on Prize Picks this football season. It's the most exciting way to play DFS, and if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Like I mentioned, you pick somewhere between 2 to 6 guys. You pick more or less. Do you think that Justin Jefferson has more or less than 100 yards? Do you think that Lamar Jackson has more or less than 1 passing touchdown? Put it in there, get the app on your phone, and watch yourself be a football genius, right? Players and stat types that you're selecting, how much fun is it? You can go defense, you can go offense, you can do whatever you want. Here's how you do it. You go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. You use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Let me tell you that again. You go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and you use that same code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100.
And we are off and running here on this Locked On crossover edition with Locked On Eagles and Locked On Rams. Welcome back. Just want to send a shout out to our every listeners out there. We really appreciate you. You mean every listener too. Join the club. Membership is free. You just have to watch every episode, listen to every episode, and you won't miss a thing about your Rams or your Eagles. But here, gentlemen, in our second segment, we're going to dive into some of these matchups. First one that sticks out to me is Puka Nacua versus this Eagles secondary. We know Darius Slay, he hasn't had his best year. You're talking about a secondary that's really ranked up there with some of the worst in the league as far as overall production this season. And Puka Nacua, he's the real deal, okay? He's someone who has taken this league by storm. He's a rookie sensation. 39 catches, the most ever for a receiver in his first 4 games. Only receiver in the league with more receiving yards is Justin Jefferson. And he was supposed to be this stopgap fill in for Cooper Kupp, Gino. And he's someone who's been fantastic and really has taken the league by storm. So how are you feeling about this Eagles secondary's ability to neutralize Mr. Puka Nacua?
I think that has to come down to Sean McVay against our defensive coordinator and Sean Desai, and that's really what it is. It's the 2 generals calling their battle plans, right? Who's going to go out there and outcoach the other? And Sean Desai, he's a younger coordinator. He was a coordinator with the Bears. He was with Seattle. And now he's here in Philly. He's still getting his feet under him, but he had 3 very good performances, in my opinion, where the defense won that football game for them. Last week against Washington, it's a division game. You got to throw out the record book, but seeing Sam Howell and Kirk Cousins and these guys go for some crazy yardage. And now you have the threat of Cooper Kupp coming back in an offense where all you have to do is really just find the space, get the ball to the receiver, and Puka Nacua can actually run routes and do a lot of things that good receivers can do. So that makes defending that type of player even that much harder. Darius Slay, I think, is the guy if you are going to do that shadow type approach to try and put on him. But there isn't really that type of corner that the Eagles have right now that matches up with these style of wide receivers. And it scares me to death. I mean, James Bradbury's 6'1". He's more of a bigger body, going to go up against a T. Higgins type. I mean, going against Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua, this guy's going to make you miss in a phone booth against a bigger body, James Bradbury, and same with Darius Slay. So that frightens me. It absolutely frightens me. But what the Eagles have to hope is that they can put 4 up front and leave it at that and then send a lot of the reinforcements into coverage. That's really what it's going to have to come down to. Can they put some looks up front where Matt Stafford, he's seen everything. It's not like you're really going to confuse him to the nth degree, but you have to at least make him think, right? Like you said, Travis, if he holds on to the ball for an extra quarter of a second, do those pressures that the Eagles have compiled over the last couple of weeks finally turn into sacks? I say the only way you take away the pass game, you're not going to stop him the whole game. You have to stop the guy that's throwing the football. That's really it. Can you get to Matt Stafford to not allow him to get the ball down the field? Because if not, I mean, and Cooper Kupp's back, Puka and him are going to go for 20 catches. Like, I'm trying to sound as optimistic as possible, but that's the one part of this team that really frightens me, and that's what the Rams have done. I mean, going back to the great game of 2017 between Wentz and Goff, that was a shootout. It was McVay and Doug Peterson's offense, which were two of the best in the National Football League. And I think you have to, as Sean Desai, say, we are not going to let these two guys win the game. If you guys run for 150 and beat us, so be it. But Matt Stafford and that passing offense can't be what wins this football.
Yeah, Gino, I'm glad you said that, because my fear, the one criticism I have of Sean McVay over the last 7 years that he's been here as the head coach of this team, is that sometimes he gets a little stubborn in the fact that he wants to do it kind of the Sean McVay way, and he wants to do it by throwing the ball. He wants to do it by being creative. He wants to do it by getting those guys in space like you're talking about. We see what it looks like when they can run the ball. We see what they did last week against the Colts, where Kyron Williams looked like an NFL running back. He had over 100 yards. They had 150 yards rushing as a team, and it opened everything up for them to be the complete team that they are. I think Kupp will play, but we're still not sure. But even if Kupp is there, they still have to run the ball. You still have to make them defend the run first, because I agree with what everybody else here is saying, which is, if you get Puka and Kupp together and the secondary has the problems that you're talking about, Gino, Sean McVay is going to find the mismatch, because you have two guys that can do everything you need them to do. If it's just one guy, maybe the Eagles can cover it. But when I got two guys, somebody's going to have a favorable matchup for the Rams along the way. And that favorable matchup gets even more favorable if you're committed to running the ball. I've seen it happen before, where they try a run or two and say, okay, that doesn't work, and then we're going to chuck it 58 times today. It can't be that. There has to be a little bit of a balanced attack. I think we saw how good it can look against the Colts a week ago. I understand that the Eagles are a far more formidable opponent than the Indianapolis Colts are up front. But at the same time, just the threat of the run, the promise of the run coming, I think will help a lot. And I've seen Sean McVay go away from that before.
Yeah, and if you're a Rams fan that's trying to talk yourself into picking your horns in this one, like you said, Gino, they're going to put up yards. They're going to find a way to get production with Matthew Stafford. And that, to me, is the matchup that I'm looking at when I'm trying to – I don't know if I'm trying to be a homer and trying to pick my team, be a fanboy here, but that's what I'm looking at. Because you look at heading into this game, Stafford, second most passing yards in the NFL through the first 4 games. Eagles have allowed the 6th most. And then also you look at, can they use those yards to translate into points? Because this is a battle of 2 top 5 offenses when it comes to most yards gained. The Rams 4th, the Eagles 5th. But the big difference there is the Rams are 13th in overall points. The Eagles are 5th in overall points. So the Eagles have done a much better job into getting those yards to translate into touchdowns and getting the cross the goal line. So will the Rams be able to do that? That's going to be a big key. I think trying to exploit James Bradbury, who is a little better on the outside than as a slot corner. So can you manipulate that matchup? That to me is going to be a big key. But yeah, look for a lot of pre-snap motion with Nakua. They do a lot of creative things like you said. So I think it's going to be a battle of game planning. Who wins now during the week as far as what's going to come to fruition on Sunday. And also the Eagles interior versus Aaron Donald. There was a lot of questions. Is Aaron Donald still an elite player? Is he still one of the best in the game after dealing with an injury for the first time in his career last year? Well, I've got news for you. Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald. And you don't have Cam Jurgens, so I think is still going to be out that foot sprain. So that to me is a matchup that always going to be a nightmare for any team out there. Can Aaron Donald be disruptive against this Eagles offensive line and get to the quarterback?
The good thing about going against Aaron Donald is, it's going to sound crazy, but Jalen Carter is going to win Rookie of the Year, and he's the closest thing this league has seen to Aaron Donald since Aaron Donald. And I'm not just saying that as an Eagles fan. Like, anybody unbiased, look at what he's doing on tape. Look at the pressures. He's right behind Aaron Donald in every statistic.
How did you guys get him, by the way? I mean, this is the part that's like,
I don't know.
Wait a second. How does a team that good get to add a player like that? It just doesn't add up.
We're supposed to get all the Georgia Bulldogs, right?
Right.
We got 5. I mean, how does Detroit
pipeline.
trade back and get Jahmyr Gibbs instead of Jalen Carter? And
Right.
The Bears give up a 4th-round pick to move back and allow us to get this kid. And the greatest thing about Jalen is that all of the offseason questions have been answered by his play on the football field. And to counter what you're saying, Doug, it's like, yeah, that interior, they got a big test, but they see these guys every day. Like they see Jordan Davis in practice every single day. And no, it's not Aaron Donald. I mean, the guy is one of one. He's top two, not two. We know that. But I think Jeff Stoutland, who is that Eagles offensive line coach, has done a very good job over the last couple seasons. Out of all of the coaches, taking away a defense's best weapon. Like if you look at the games against Micah Parsons the last 2 years, what did they do? They just either ran away from him or they read him. And they made him kind of wait. And I think that's the same approach that you have to do with Aaron Donald. You either have to stretch run this thing to death and not even allow him to make your life hell on the interior, or you just have to kind of combo him to death with a chip block and try your best and just try and rush that football. But the one thing I will say is that if the Eagles can control time of possession, which the Rams are also very good at, they're both, I believe, top 5 teams right now in terms of time of possession, that's ultimately the battle. Can the Eagles run that ball, take advantage of what the Rams have up front or are lacking up front on the defensive side outside of Aaron Donald, and win that matchup? Because if it comes down to that pass game, like you're saying, let's say the Rams have a couple quick possessions and they are able to score, but then the Eagles can kind of just choke that thing down. That's been the MO for the Eagles. If they can establish that run game, take away your run game, that's really what they win on. They win on controlling that clock. And Doug, I want to check one thing you said, the Eagles getting across the goal line. They can get across the goal line as long as they're not in the red zone. They're the 26th worst red zone offense in football right now. It's abysmal. But between the 20s, that's where they make you pay. If you could kind of keep this Eagles explosive offense at bay, take away those explosive plays, and make Aaron Donald chase Jalen Hurts outside of the pocket, that's where you win the football game. Get Jalen Hurts off platform, because I think like that Sean McVay quote that you had, Travis, where he wants to do it his way. Yeah. Jalen at times will kind of want to do it his way and get back to old Jalen Hurts. And it's like, oh no, if we just go within our game plan, it'll be pretty good. And I think it just really comes down to who follows their game plan the most, like who doesn't get away from what your game plan was Monday through Saturday, because both of these coaching staffs are smart. They know what the threats are. But if you think that all of a sudden you're just going to run the ball at Aaron Donald or try and run against Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, I think that's crazy. I think it is a passing game heavy, and I think we might see 3 receivers go for over 100 yards in this game. I think that's a very realistic thing that could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to get to your point about the red zone, Rams 7th worst red zone defense in the NFL. The Birds are scoring TDs on a 46.2% clip. That's 24. So yeah, something's got to give from that standpoint. But this could be a situation where this Rams secondary really shines in this one, because I think that's really the next big key matchup in this one is that Rams secondary. They've impressed all season long. They've held wide receivers with a 75.2 rating with just 1 touchdown allowed. Ahkello Witherspoon, who they picked up, he's been one of the best cornerbacks in the league so far. He's allowed the second lowest pass rating coverage among all cornerbacks at 33.3. So I think that's going to be the big key. Can they air it out? Can you see those big plays? We saw it last week. How you feeling about that Eagles passing game heading into this one, Gino?
I'm a big fan of Ahkello Witherspoon. He's one guy that it's like wherever he goes, he kind of just performs well. He's like a Toyota Camry. Like he's going to work for 200,000 miles and you're going to say, how did this guy play for 15 years in the league? Right. And I think he matches up well stylistically, body size with the wide receivers that they do have. But the thing is, like you guys are saying about having Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, you could stop one of them. It's hard to stop the other one. I mean, even last week combined, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown go for well over 200 yards. A.J. has his best game as an Eagle ever. And that's going against a pretty good Washington secondary with Kendall Fuller, a young Emmanuel Forbes, who I don't think matched up well at all for the Eagles. But this secondary for the Rams, I think, presents a lot of challenges, because if they can just, I think, be smart and just keep everything underneath like the Eagles do to the other side of the ball, that's how you're going to beat the Eagles. Like, make them chip away at you. Try your best to get them in the red zone. And I mean, even if you win 50% of the red zone battles against the Eagles offense, that's still doing a good job. Holding them to field goals is how you can beat this team. And that's kind of been what has almost come back to bite them in the end, is how many times have they lacked those explosive plays to get them into the end zone and they have to settle for 3. 3 points is less than 7. You don't need to be a mathematician to know that. So when Matt Stafford is chucking touchdowns to Cooper Kupp, can you keep up? And I think they can. I hate the under in this game. Like over at FanDuel, I'm absolutely taking the over. I think both offenses have a great day, and the secondary from the Rams, it's a unit that you wouldn't have expected to be this good, but you have to take it seriously because look at the results. Like you said, 1 touchdown allowed to wide receivers in 4 games. That's pretty good in the NFL.
That's really good. And we got some predictions coming up, some more keys to the game. That's coming up next here on this crossover episode of Locked On Rams and Locked On Eagles.
All right. Speaking of FanDuel, like Gino just mentioned, why don't you snap into the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook? Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including the spread, including player props, over-unders. Like Gino just said, he hates the under in this game. He wants to go over, and lots more at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon and get yourself going right now. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Also, Locked On Rams is sponsored by BetterHelp, right? It happens to all of us. You have that thing that just keeps kind of going and kind of running in the background of your brain, and you're not quite sure how to get out of that loop. You kind of know what you should do. You kind of know what's good for you, but you're not just quite sure how to get it done. That's where therapy can help you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It is entirely online. It's incredibly convenient. It's flexible, and it's suited to your schedule. You just have to fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched up with a licensed therapist. And if it doesn't click with that therapist, you can switch therapist at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Get out of that loop. Start working for yourself. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams and Locked On Eagles. Now, gentlemen, here in our final segment, some predictions in this one. I think for me, you look at that Eagles team, the passing game wasn't clicking through their first 3. Now they're starting to get it going. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, both coming off of big games. I think the run game, the brotherly shove, I still kind of miss the tush push. But, hey, I still think that Eagles team coming into L.A., trying to stay undefeated, it's going to be a tough task for this Rams team. But I think the Rams shock the world in this one. I think the Rams get the dub against the Eagles, giving their first loss of the season. I think Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and his passing game torches that Eagles secondary and somehow, some way gets that win to go over 500.
So for me, look, I'm still trying to figure out if the Rams are any good or not. I don't know. Like they looked dreadful against the Bengals. They nearly blew a 23-point lead a week ago. We could so easily be sitting here talking about a 1-3 football team and how do you get your hands on Caleb Williams. They're a coin flip away from not getting that ball back and being 1-3 and having blown one of the biggest leads in the league all season long. They're also 2-2 and have a chance to kind of establish themselves with the return of Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford healthy enough, Puka Nacua doing his thing to give the Eagles their first loss. I think we're going to know a lot more about this team about 4:00 in the afternoon out here on the West Coast, that we're going to have an idea of whether or not this is a team that, you know, the proverbial good, bad team that can take care of business against other teams that aren't very good and maybe give the good teams a run for their money like San Francisco and Philadelphia. Or are they legitimately good? Can they beat? I know that they gave the Niners a tough game, probably the toughest game that they've seen so far. I know that the Eagles maybe haven't looked like they looked a year ago. They're the defending NFC champs. They got a whole bunch of talent. They got a good coach, and they haven't lost a football game all season long. This is the litmus test for them coming into this one. I think we're going to know a lot more about them by the end of the day.
I'm still frightened to pick this game, and the line has the Rams plus 4.5 over at FanDuel, which means that if it was at home in Philadelphia, it would be a 7.5 point line, which, if you know anything about gambling, is the biggest. Just bet this line because Vegas wants you to lose your money on the Eagles minus 7.5. And it turns out that the Rams end up covering and they might end up winning outright. But I'm very superstitious and I've picked the Eagles to win every crossover and they have. So I'm just doing that because I have to, because of my superstition. I do think they can lose, but I think this is a game where, as you said, Travis, is this Rams team good?
Yeah.
And I think with those younger teams, it happens a lot in the NHL and I think baseball, like where teams they're younger and they're a little ahead of schedule, but then they run into a team that has a lot of veteran presence and they've had these scenarios where they've overcome adversity late in these games and they know how to close it out. And that's what the NFL is. It's like it comes down to a couple plays and a couple points that turn your way every week. Like you said, like if that coin flip goes the other way, do they lose that game? If Ron Rivera goes for 2 at the end of the Eagles game, do they lose and they're 3-1? And that's the parity of the league. I think it's high scoring though. I think both of these offenses are going to come out there and really show who they are. Let's say both teams, like, I think once again score 30 points. I like the over, but I think at the end of the day, the Eagles will win this game, but I think it's very, very close. This is the one where I don't think it opens up until like late in the fourth quarter, really, like if one of these teams is going to pull away. But if the Eagles do lose, I think they lose by double digits, where Matt Stafford just outduels them and they can't throw themselves back into the game. And you're really asking those question marks of all the things that came to bite the Eagles in the past 4 games. Could it come back to bite them today or on Sunday rather? But I'm going with the Birds just because I have to. 5-0. Hopefully they can get out of there and go beat San Fran. I'm so sick of their fans complaining about us. We're all the way across the country. Like, go worry about your division, please.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, we're like, it's like the meet with the Power Rangers and the Ninja Turtles shaking hands for the 49ers. That's us, Eagles and Rams fans. But yeah, my heart tells me Matthew Stafford and the gang lap the scoreboard through the air. My brain tells me we're going to see some brotherly shove. They're going to be pounding the rock in the second half. But let's just hope for a great game. I think that this game is a lot better now than we expected it to be heading into the year. And I'm excited to watch. I know everyone out there is as well. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at @dmac_LA. You can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers, and Gino Cammillero. Thank you so much for joining us. Man, it was great having you on the show. Good luck this week. Have a great season. And thanks again, my man.
Appreciate you guys. And as I end every show over at LOE, fly, Eagles, fly.
Yeah, whose house? It's Locked on Rams house, and fly, Eagles, fly. Thanks again, guys.